Good to
So
have
nice
you.
to be here at this lovely facility, PayPal New York headquarters. It's such a great space.
It is, isn't it?
I
Yeah.
love it.
We have almost somewhere between 300 and 400 people here now.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's an inspiring place to have a conversation about payments and the evolution of payments over the last decade, and of course, PayPal over the last 2 decades.
Right.
But let's start with your observations of how payments has evolved in the decade that we are about to wrap. I mean, we've seen so much change, so much innovation. I'd love to just get your thoughts on that.
Well, PayPal was just starting 20
Just
years
a baby.
ago. E-commerce was at its very beginnings. The internet was at its very beginnings as well. You had mobile phones, still a kind of a luxury item. You really
There were
didn't-
car phones. Remember car
I
phones?
do, those huge brick things that you had. That was a
That was an
a
innovation.
status symbol.
Yeah, it was.
Huge status symbol. And today, you fast forward and, the internet is ubiquitous. It's like a digital tornado in many ways. Sort of it lands on industries, it sucks them up, it spits it out in different forms or different winners, different value propositions, different business models that have evolved. And the payment industry is no different, or financial services is no different. I think, if you look at the last 20 years, it's maybe been, more of what was extrapolated. And I think if you look ahead, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that. I think we're going to hit a whole different step function, and there could be more change in the next 5 years than there were in the last 30 or 40 years.
I think you're right, because we've laid the tracks for accelerating innovation in the next 5 or so years, maybe even a shorter period of time. But as you think about the last decade, what are the things you think we as a payments ecosystem have underestimated in terms of the pace of evolution, or perhaps even overestimated in terms of thinking things would happen sooner, but maybe they just didn't or haven't yet?
Yeah, well, that was a great question. I think, first of all, we've consistently overestimated the demise of cash.
Yeah.
I remember almost every year since I've been in the financial services industry, somebody has predicted the demise of cash. I actually do think, as you look forward, that is inevitable, but over time, probably the next 10 years or so, you're going to see an extreme form of digitization. I mean, you look at countries like India right now, which you would have never imagined moving from cash to a fully digital payment stack going on. So one is, I think we overestimated the move, and a lot of that is inertia, and a lot of that also is there's no compelling value proposition. Like you've said this a lot, and actually you're one of the people who I've often quoted and looked to for your studies, because I think they're always, there's no agenda behind them. They're just looking at the facts, and you're interpreting them as you best think. But, people used to think that just by tapping your phone, at a point of sale or somewhere, that, that would unleash the rise of digital payments. And you always said, and I agree with this, that a form factor change was not going to be enough. It really had to be a value proposition change. And I think we're at that cusp right now, where you're starting to see the convergence of shopping and payments and rewards and other value-added services coming together. And you're already seeing that in other countries, like China has the emergence of super apps right now. They also really didn't have an embedded point of sale system. They didn't have, a large penetration of credit. So that was ripe for new forms of payments. But here in the U.S., I think we overestimated the pace of change, and probably underestimate now how rapidly it will change over the next 5 to 10 years.
Let's talk about, again, the last 10 years. So 2010, you weren't here.
Nope.
You were here,
Planet,
but you weren't here.
Here.
You weren't here.
No, wasn't on Planet.
You weren't
PayPal
Planet
yet.
PayPal yet. So you were at Amex,
Yes.
joined in 2014,
Yeah.
IPO'd a year later. I just want to refresh your mind in terms of statistics for PayPal. 2010.
Is that because I'm getting older?
Well, I'm sure you have these right at the tip of your fingers, but just in case. 100 million active users in 2010.
Yeah.
When PayPal IPO'd in 2015, 1 year after you joined, 47 billion market cap, 179 million active users. A year later, 2016, there was a really pivotal decision that PayPal made to partner with the card ecosystem, the traditional payments ecosystem. And we've seen that rocket ship continue to grow. How pivotal was that decision of yours to PayPal's growth trajectory and where we are today in its future?
I can't think of anything in those early years that was more important than that for us. I think that set us on a whole different trajectory. I do a lot of martial arts, and one of the primary tenets of martial art is that the best way to win a fight is to not get into a fight.
Have one, yeah.
Because inevitably, no matter how good
Right.
you are, if you get into a fight, you can be hit hard. Frequently you are. And there's no guarantee that you're going to win that fight. I always had a saying here at PayPal that we should be customer champions. And everybody always thinks, being a customer champion is just sort of, it's something that every CEO says or every company says. But I really meant it. And the example I used, the first day that I came to PayPal, my first all-employee meeting, was our business model. And our business model, at the time, we thought that steering people to the lowest cost funding instrument was fundamental to how we made money. And of course, that did two things. One, it confused customers. Sometimes customers want to use their credit card. Sometimes they want to use balance. Sometimes they want to use their debit card. They basically want to use their digital wallet, just like they use their
physical wallet.
Physical wallet. Like, I'm doing this payment. I want to make a choice as to how I'm going to pay. So when we decided that we were going to move towards customer choice, because that was the right thing to go and do, it also opened up the opportunity to work with all of the card networks, with different financial institutions around the world, because all of a sudden nobody could complain about customer choice. There wasn't this like, wait, if we support PayPal, somebody can come on with a credit card, but you'll try to move them to, checking account or their balance. Now it was whatever a customer wanted to pay with. On every single transaction, they could make that choice. And that really opened up in a tremendous partnership to us. First of all, customers stopped churning. We could add more customers because they wanted to use their credit card. So we saw, to your point, we now have 300 million people using our platform. Our engagement has gone from, when I first joined, it was 17 times a year, to now it's over 40 times a year. So think about, not only is our base growing, but our engagement is growing. And a lot of that has to do with choice. Now we've improved product experiences, we've added more products, but that was number one. And then number two, and you would never ever have thought this, but banks started putting into place marketing programs to drive their customers to sign up for PayPal. And part of the reason for that is we have such a good checkout that we have almost 2 times the conversion of the next nearest wallet.
But did you think that way when you joined PayPal initially? Did you think that there was an opportunity to partner, or were you just not sure? Was that part of the thinking in coming into PayPal?
that was a second order effect.
Mhm.
The first question I got asked when I came into PayPal, and literally the first question, I had been introduced by John Donahoe to the entire PayPal employee base, videoed everywhere around the world. And somebody in the audience raised their hand, asked a very brave question, and they said, "Do you think of PayPal as a technology company or a financial services company?"
Interesting.
Yep. And I knew why they were saying that, because I
Right.
had just come from American
Right.
Express, and
Right.
they were afraid that, technology wasn't as important, and that was a lot of the identity
Mhm.
of PayPal. And I said, I knew what they wanted to hear. But what I said is, what I hope in 2 or 3 years from now, that we're defining ourselves as a customer champion company. A company that focuses on what are the pain points that consumers are going through, and that we challenge ourselves constantly to be the best provider for the evolution of where consumers are going. And I pointed out our business model right at that time, which was very controversial,
Yeah.
as you can probably imagine.
Yep.
I remember when we announced this, I think, you remember this, our
I
stock
do.
dropped
Yep.
by 9 or 10% that day. That evening, there were headlines that were questioning our strategy, which, I thought to myself that strategies typically play out over years, not
15 minutes.
half day, to see if they're right or wrong. But I did come in with that thought, because I think you can get hung up on what's one competitor doing or another competitor. And in this industry, there's an announcement a day.
Not even a day,
Yeah.
like an hour.
Yes. So constant announcements from one part of the ecosystem and another. And that could really drive a company crazy
Yep.
if they paid attention to every one of those things, as opposed to focusing on what exactly do customers need, and then what are our capabilities to satisfy those needs? What can we develop? Where can we partner? And that started the ecosystem thought. And where do we acquire? And we've been quite acquisitive as well.
I know your big passion and mission is democratizing access to financial services and making money go farther, smarter, which is obviously part of what the Honey acquisition will do for you, as well as other things that you've done on the employee side and on the consumer side.
It's really nice when the values of your company and the mission of your company go hand in hand, both external and internal. Right. And when you can live your values, I believe you can maximize the value you deliver to shareholders. I would argue against people who are saying, like, wait a minute, aren't you making a choice here between one constituency or another? I would say that it's not incongruent to say that having purpose, living by your values, putting your employees first, does not go hand in hand with maximizing shareholder value. In fact, I think at least over the medium and long term, if you don't do that, you sub-optimize what you can deliver for your shareholders.
How long do you think it'll be before other corporations think that way? And I'm sure that was a topic of discussion that you had with the board over time in helping them understand this new way.
Yeah. Well, it's surprising to me that we still have a pay gap in the United States.
Right.
Both gender and ethnicity. And you would think by now that would not be the case. Why? Because one study after another has shown that diverse companies perform better than those who are not. If you want the best people, how can you fish in just a small pond as opposed to the full ocean? And how can you expect to have women come to work for your company if you're going to pay them less than men who are doing the same job with comparable experience levels, and you're basically that's just saying we don't value as much as we do others. And to me, that's just anathema to our values as a company. And I think it gives us huge competitive advantage because we can attract
talent,
the best talent. So when you say how long will it take for like other companies to go do this, I don't know. I really believe we are at a turning point in our country's history in terms of, you know, where we are as a democracy, where we are with capitalism. I think capitalism is a great system, but every great product needs to be upgraded. You know, it needs to evolve, right? Like, it doesn't matter what it is, they all need to evolve. We know that in the tech industry. Right. We evolve constantly. Every single day we're making improvements. And I think that it's obvious to me that capitalism needs to evolve. And to the point you were making, our communities need to be strong. Yeah. Our consumers need to be strong for all businesses to thrive going forward. And enabling people to have a foundational level of financial health creates these stronger communities. It enables people to think about what are some of the dreams that I could have. Could I start my own business? You know, can I, you know, maybe hire one person more? Can I? And to me, this becomes a positive spiral as opposed to a negative spiral that can happen. And I don't think there are that many companies that need to break through for all of them to start to go and do that. Because I believe those that do this, now obviously, I'm probably biased about this, but I believe that those who do that will have a competitive advantage. Right. And I think, and I hope that a number of companies will start to step up. You're already beginning to see, you know, some of the what I would consider being leading brands. You know, I think Doug McMillon at Walmart's doing a great job around this. I think Satya Nadella is doing a great job at this at Microsoft. I think there are other real leaders out there that are beginning to step up in this place and lead. And I'm inspired by them. Hopefully we'll see more and more, because I think it's really important for our country. I think it's important for democracy. And I think it's important for where capitalism goes going forward.
So as we think about the next decade, which we said earlier is going to be just innovation accelerated. Yeah. Is what we just talked about the PayPal playbook, and should it be the financial services, fintech, payments playbook?
Yeah. So I gave a speech a couple of years ago at Money 2020, which, you know, is kind of the, besides your conference, is the financial.
Thanks for saying that.
You're welcome. Is the you know, the big gathering of the financial services industry, and I said that I thought that the moonshot for our industry would be to assure that no citizen is excluded from the digital economy, is excluded from the financial system. And we should be able to do that. Like, there are a lot of things that I find difficult to imagine solving, you know, because it takes so many people to do so many things. But technology can dramatically reduce the cost of basic transactions, especially for those outside the system. Like, we're one of the largest providers of working capital in the United States. We probably do over $1 billion a quarter in working capital. 70% of our loans, 70% of them, go to the 10% of counties where 10 or more banks have closed branches.
Really?
Okay. So the overwhelming majority to these banking deserts. And banking deserts are typically in neighborhoods where the median income is lower than the national average.
Yep.
Because for a bank to have a branch,
Yep.
they need a certain amount of deposits to be profitable. I mean, they're making rational business decisions to close those branches, but those small businesses have nowhere to get working capital. Here's the great piece of that other side of that 70%. Where we provide working capital, the average sales of a business go up by 22%.
Wow.
Versus the control that goes up 1% to 2%.
Really?
So you're making a real difference in neighborhoods that
Yep.
really need it.
Mm-hmm.
Disproportionate loans to women-owned businesses, disproportionate working capital to minority-owned businesses. And these make such a difference. And that's the promise, I think, of technology. We don't look at FICO scores. We use our own proprietary algorithms. We're able to look at somebody's history and determine what that risk factors can be. We can now lend responsibly to consumers, almost 30% lower in FICO scores than traditional FICO scores would do with the same risk profile.
Wow.
And that's now giving people access to credit that they couldn't have had before, because most people, their expenses aren't greater than their income. It's
the timing.
It's the timing, exactly, that they're just not in sync. And so, if you can balance that out with, the appropriate amount of responsible lending to somebody, it can make a huge difference in people's lives. And, and now that you have smartphones, you have 2 billion of them out there today. The cost of them are dropping dramatically. Pretty soon, most of the world will have a smartphone. Pretty soon, most of the world will be connected, completely connected. And then you have all the power of a bank branch in the palm of your hand. And so you can do transactions instantaneously. You don't have to wait in line to turn one form of currency into another, like a check into cash, and then cash into a check and to pay a bill. You do everything right from your phone. Dramatically decrease costs, dramatically decrease the amount of time people spend on it, and start to use software and tools to enable forms of budgeting that are simple and easy for people to incent savings, to be able to create this, again, foundational level of financial health. And to me, that's the vision that I think inspires all of us at PayPal. I think inspires so many in the industry. You hear what Ajay Banga says at MasterCard very frequently about financial inclusion. I think if we can bring the best of our assets and the best of the assets of the rest of the industry together to bring those multiple billions of people, everyone talks about 1.7 billion people, double it when you think about those who are underserved. Bring them into the world that is emerging, the digital economy, make sure nobody is left outside of that system. I think we can do that, and I think that is the moonshot, and I think that's something that can inspire all of us to work together.
Is that the good to great playbook for PayPal and for the industry?
I think that would be an industry that could look at itself and say, we did great things for the world.
Dan, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's a great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.